Justice, can you give me permission to share my screen, please? Access to share my screen. Hi, everyone. So right now we have the technical panel session. So on the call right now, we have Timmera Whaley Omidire. She's a GIS and map quality analyst at Meta. We also have Linda Ochwada. She's also the product evangelist at Deal Code, and we'll be expecting the other panelists to join the call in a while. So for this session, Emmanuel would take over, would be the one to host the session. So Emmanuel, over to you. Okay, maybe while I wait for Emmanuel to get ready for the next question. So Timmera, I think we can just start. So I'm just going to start by asking a couple of questions. So if you also have questions for the panelists, you can also ask. So basically the idea for this session, the objective for this session is to, share around what are the pathways, what are the things you need if you want to go into the technical part of geospatial. Yesterday, we did a bit of panel session around the non-technical part. So today is going to be for those people who are interested in the technical part of GIS. So just as for a starter question, as an opening statement, I'll start with Timmera. So can you share what you do and how that is relevant in the geospatial ecosystem? Can you tell us what you do as a GIS and map quality analyst and how that is relevant in the geospatial ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. So I am a GIS and maps quality analyst at Meta, and a lot of my high impact work focuses on public participatory mapping platforms such as OpenStreetMap. And one of the main questions that my work answers is how do we freely share high quality geospatial data with the world, as well as geospatial tools with the world through different open source projects. One project that I work closely with is called Daylight. This is publicly available to everyone. And so Daylight is a vandalism-free version of OpenStreetMap where users can use this data for a variety of projects that are important to you. So a lot of my work focuses on geospatial data quality, and then how do we share that quality with the world?
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for that. Linda, can you go ahead to also share? I know that Linda is a product evangelist at Deal Code. So if you can share what you do as a product evangelist and also maybe anything you've done technically as a geospatial professional. Yeah.
So a product evangelist for Deal Code, and Deal Code is an AI sales tool. Though it is in sales, a product evangelist is a job title that has become common across all tech industries. This is including geospatial industry as it's becoming more technical. For example, when you look at Esri, compare Esri 22 years ago when we had only ArcMap 8.0, and right now when we have ArcGIS 11.0, it's becoming more technical, a lot of deep learning capabilities and function, cloud-based. And in this technological advancement, it causes huge gaps between the company teams. I'm talking about revenue, the revenue areas, those are sales and marketing, and the CTO or the development team, or between the development team or the development capabilities of softwares and clients. Therefore, there is a need to have someone or to have a position where you glue these two, the non-technical world and the technical work together. So should I say a human API? And this is who I am. I speak both on technical and non-technical aspect to teams in between companies. It can be a GIS company or it can be any other technical company. I've worked with AI a lot in geospatial industry, for example, object detection on satellite images. And this is kind of my background and how my work is related to GIS as a whole.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. So Linda says she's the Iman API. I think I'll start calling you the Iman API.
Yeah,
moving forward.
API.
Yes. I mean, like, yeah, thank you, everyone, Linda and Timmera for sharing. I think we'll still wait for Matt to join. Once Matt comes on the call, then he will also give a bit of introduction around what he does. I mean, just to also reshare that the reason why, we thought that this session would be very useful is because, we feel like we need that kind of exposure in Africa around what type of technical career paths can people follow, because I think that the major ones that we are very used to here in this part of the world is maybe geospatial analysts, geospatial data scientists, and software developers. So a lot of people are not really aware of what other technical parts they can actually follow. So that is the reason why we are having this session. And I'm so glad that we have a product evangelist who is going to, talk about what you can do if you want to become a product evangelist, what type of skill set do you need to get into that field, and also a GIS and map quality analyst who is also going to share around what she does. So Linda, I know that you've been in the technology, in the geospatial area for a while. I think I know you, and I know that there was one time where you built like a product, FICO. So because of that, I want to throw this question to you, like, how do you think we can build innovation using geospatial data? And how do you think we can start? I mean, before we move into the deep technical career part, we just want to hear your opinion around how can we even build innovation around geospatial data, given that you've already done something like that before? And what's your advice based on the experience that you have so far?
Technology is really, it's really advancing, and so is data. Data capabilities. And there is also, there's always an increased focus on leveraging the data or the space around us to create innovations and at the same time deliver values and insight from what we see, from the space that we have. You consider the space around us whenever you want to build something, you consider a space around yourself. And you try to find the main challenges that are there or challenges that are there in that space and create opportunities. I always have a saying that whenever there is a problem, it's just not a problem, but a way to create an innovation out of it. So don't view a problem as a gigantic obstacle, but rather a way to create alternative opportunities out of it. So when you combine the opportunity together with advanced knowledge, together with data, then you come up with an innovation that is actually based on this geospatial. And you can also, of course, leverage existing innovation. I mean, I like using S3 a lot. There is S3, really gigantic. But at the same time, you find other people coming up with tools that are based on what S3 is already producing. And some people can come up with innovation in that particular aspect. So what is my advice on how to start? Of course, you need to define your objective. What is your goal? What do you want to achieve in your innovation? What is the greatest problem that you want to solve, that you want to focus? Two, do your research. How is the market? What is your product meant for? Who is your product meant for? And what is the market you're going to operate in? So the competitors. Also, you have to define a value proposition for your product. What do I mean by value proposition? You want to get a unique selling point for your innovation. what makes your company sell. And last, you want to access and develop core capabilities, like you want to watch out for your team and establish what skills you need to create, to drive your innovation to success. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Timmera, do you have anything to chip in? I mean, given that you also work in a company that has a lot of innovation around it, so what would you say is how can we build innovation based using geospatial data, and how do you think we can start?
I really love this question, and I love Linda's answer as well, especially the part where Linda says, where there is a problem, there is a way to create alternative opportunities out of it. So before my start at Meta, I was a PhD student at University of Arkansas, and a part of my dissertation, I wanted to solve a real world problem that was very close to my heart. And that problem was about environmental justice. So looking at the disproportionate distribution of environmental hazards amongst marginalized communities, specifically in my home state of Alabama. And I had this really great idea on how to solve some of these problems geospatially, but I didn't know how to bring it out in a way that it could be an actual product. And so although I could think geospatially, I didn't at the time have the ability to think like commercially about this product, right? And so I had to surround myself with people who had that experience. And that's something that I advocate for all of us who are innovators. Find yourself in groups of people who not only know how to relate with you on the innovation level, but they know how to also foster your thinking around commercial products as well. So at the time, my university had a lot of resources. We had a program called NSF. It's like an NSF program where it teaches students how to bring an idea out of ideation and into the commercial market. We did things like market surveys where we analyzed the market to see like who our competitors would be, what would make our product competitive against all of our competitors. We talked to some of our competitors. And so just being able to merge this gap between my geospatial thinking and also being in a room with people who have the experience of bringing ideas out of the lab into the commercial market, it really made a difference in the way that I perform in my own work now at Meta as a GIS and map quality analyst.
Yeah, I mean, like that's very interesting contribution from Linda and Timmera. And you won't believe that the last session we had before we got to this technical session was about how interdisciplinary approach to building solutions to research is rather than being you're a geospatial professional, you're the expert on that field. So the idea is once you want to build solutions, if you want to do research in a particular area where you don't have the domain knowledge, the idea is to always go into that field, look for people who you can work together with, and then do that, maybe build that solution, that research. And it's so funny that it's something that is being repetitive, because you said it even during the non-technical session yesterday. It was still something that was still mentioned, that at the end of the day we need a group of people to bring solutions to life. It's not just about the fact that you are a geospatial expert. You also need somebody that has the commercial background. You need somebody that has maybe the product evangelist that would push the product out. You also need the people who are the business developer, the salespeople that would sell the product. So I really enjoyed the fact that we keep touching on this topic, and it just points out that it's very important that we move out of I'm a geospatial professional and try to see how we can collaborate with every other person in other fields to build solutions, to start innovative solutions in Africa. Okay, so now moving on, so let's hear from Timmera. I think I would like to just move into the tech part now, just a bit. So what are the skill sets what are the skill sets to get into to be a GIS and map quality analyst? What type of skill set do you think people can have. And if you also have other maybe area where you've worked before outside of this, that is a technical role, you can also share what skill set you think people can, you know, have to get started at the end of the day. Yeah.
Great. The number one skill that I really try to foster in myself is my ability to collaborate with others. So it's really easy to do end-to-end processes on your own, but can you do these same processes in a group? Like, how well can you communicate with other people? If there's a problem, how well can you communicate that problem to the people in your team? So working collaboratively with others is a really big skill to foster within yourself. The second skill that I really try to foster within myself is also my ability to solve real world problems. And what I mean by that is, like, there might be a problem I don't have the solution to, but I know that I can research the answer. I know that I can reach out to people to find the answer. So I'm not just idle and looking at the problem. I am actively trying to find a solution by connecting the dots, whether it's through information that I'm finding online or reaching out to experts in the field. I'm actively trying to solve that problem. And then the third skill is, then once you find some of the answers to those problems, how well can you apply geospatial solutions to solve those problems? So really specializing in your skills in geospatial technology, whether it's through spatial analysis or geospatial data science, or maybe some other really great intersection between GIS and another field. Just really creating that specialization within yourself to solve those problems in efficient and unique ways.
Yeah. So Linda, I think you can also, you know, chip in what you're.
Thanks for what you've said, Timmera. I agree with you, and just wanted to add 2 more points. I think what I value also most when it comes to skills, apart from these technical skills, of course, of programming, you know, coding and the likes. I think you need to have to be a critical thinker. You know, fast think, analyze your solution very fast, and be able to come up with the solution as fast as you can, and this can make you stand out. The second point is be empathetic. Put yourself in the position or in the shoe of the people that you are trying to solve a problem for. I've seen a lot of business models actually failing because people do not think at all in and be in the shoe of the people that you are solving their problems for. Especially, let's look at GIS. You know, in the GIS field. If at all you are going to solve a climate-related challenge, you have to put yourself in the shoe of the people who are suffering towards climate change, who are being affected by climate change. And this is, I consider, one of the important skills. Otherwise, we'll just be like machines, like robots. Yeah, thanks.
I'd like to chime in, and Linda, that last point, I really like it a lot. And it just reminds me of my own personal experience where I was creating a survey to give out to people so that I could try to solve a problem. And my survey had to be reviewed by a board, and they denied it because they said the language that I was using in my survey was too complex. And that goes back to empathizing with the people that you're reaching out to. So knowing your targeted audience and relating to them, and then providing solutions to them in a way that, like, they understand. So even if you have a solution, if nobody understands that solution, is it really a solution, right? So it's important to really think critically about the information that you are sharing with people.
I mean, like, those are like quite very interesting points. So I'm going back to Timmera now. I mean, like, So I want to ask, I mean, we've been able to, you know, talk about what are the soft skills that people need, you know, to do well in this kind of roles. So now I just want to ask Timmera, like, what are the tools that you use in your work as a GIS and map quality analyst? And why I'm asking these questions is so that people can also, you know, get to understand what kind of skill sets or technical tools they need to maybe learn, just for them to know that these things exist at the end of it. Yeah.
Great. So I probably can't talk about the specific tools that I use in my work, but I can talk about some of the tools that I use to lead up to this point of being a GIS and map quality analyst. And one of the main things that I really had to focus in on was SQL. So being able to ask questions, meaningful questions about the data that you have. And whenever you're working with large scale data, you want to be able to answer those questions efficiently and quickly. And SQL is a really great tool for that whenever you're working with geospatial databases. The other thing is, like, of course, we have our amazing ArcGIS products. I grew up technically, like, speaking through like my geospatial career, I really grew up with the geospatial products through Esri. But I also had to learn how to use open source geospatial products as well, such as QGIS. So really expanding your skill sets in different types of geospatial software, whether it's ArcGIS Pro or whether it's QGIS, MapTiler, all of these really great open source geospatial products. Knowing how to use those, I think, is just as important as knowing how to use some of the leading proprietary geospatial products as well.
SQL. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so for sharing, Timmera. So Linda, can you also share?
Yeah, for sure. So mostly as Timmera said, of course, you need SQL. I always mention SQL. I'm always having a hard time pronouncing SQL. So SQL. Of course, I work a lot with Python for data analytics, Python and R. When it comes to technical tools or technical languages, you have to understand Python is so rampant, R and Python. Those are mostly that I've worked with. Of course, ArcGIS capabilities, and in terms of deep learning, whenever data collection, those training data set collection, of course, ArcGIS is perfect. When it comes to point cloud visualization, I've also used ArcGIS, QGIS a bit. It's open sourced, and there's a lot of new improvement that QGIS is providing. And also one other one that I've used a lot is Saga GIS. Saga GIS is really good when it comes to remote sensing imaging.
Yeah, thank you so much, Linda. For Nini Love, I mean, we've been talking about SQL. So we have Matt Forrest on the call. Hi, Matt. Thank you for joining.
Hey, yeah, thank you. And sorry, I was late. Our daughter decided to wake up at a inconvenient time in the middle of the night, so I was doing that, and I'm a bit late.
Yeah, I mean, so you joined us at the right time, I would say. So maybe before we move on to the next question, maybe you can just do just answer 2 questions. Just share with us what you do, and then how that is relevant in the geospatial ecosystem, and then also share with us what are the tools and the tools that you use in your job that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I currently head up the solutions engineering team at Cardo. Cardo is a geospatial platform that really exists in the cloud. But to build that, we use a lot of different open source tools. So, we use everything from the spatial SQL ecosystem and connecting to tools like PostGIS or data warehouses like BigQuery, Amazon Redshift, or Snowflake or Databricks. And then for every part of the platform, we're using different tools like GDAL to create import processes. We use DeckGL and visualization tools on our front end product. And sort of my role day to day is to work with a lot of different people that use our product, customers and researchers, and everybody in between to kind of help them use it. So that's kind of my day to day, is actually just working on a wide range of geospatial problems, which is very, very fun. That's kind of how we fit in. We definitely kind of focus on creating a completely open ecosystem and using all those different tools. And then, I think, most importantly, kind of what, how, our tooling, like I said, is very much, spatial SQL is the thing we're doing quite a bit of. I would say that's definitely the language I use the most. And then, we create maps in our platform and things like that. But, it's not to say that we use other pieces as well. We use and integrate into the Python ecosystem. So, we might create notebooks and write things there. We've certainly started to use more and more imagery. So things with, Google Earth Engine or other tools and, in that space. So it's very fun. We get to see a lot of different problems. So that's really, enjoyable from that perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt, for your perspective. I think the next question is still going to be for Matt. So before you came in, I was explaining that the objective for this session is to, let people be aware of the kind of skill set, the kind of tools, what is possible, also like in the technical aspect of geospatial. And as somebody who works as a solution engineer, or somebody who maybe leads a team at Carto, I don't know if this would be like a stretch, but I want you to just kind of list out maybe like talk about some of the technical people in your team and what they do. What do I mean is, what are the other technical parts that you work with at Carto, and what they do? I mean, just so that people can get an understanding, because you mentioned cloud. So I would assume that there will be cloud engineers at Carto if they exist. So just to let people understand what kind of other, skill set that we don't really hear about in this part of the world are available and that people can follow.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's certainly a lot of parallels, in terms of the tools we use, and maybe there's just, different, we're kind of assembling them in a product, right? And I think that might be what might differ from somebody who's, in the field or working on different projects. So there's a lot of certainly overlap, right? I hopped on, I was hearing a little bit about QGIS, and certainly a lot of the tools that we use are embedded in Q. You can connect your PostGIS database and create maps with QGIS. You can use GDAL, and when you actually install QGIS, GDAL is installed as a part of that. So there's all these tools are kind of in the same place. Carto as a platform was built first for the cloud. One of our first projects was looking at deforestation around the globe. And this is in 2012, and we kind of had to build the product to, have a spatial database and allow tools to import into that database and then render the map tiles online. So a lot of our team does the spatial analysis, and they come from all different backgrounds. They come from, a pure GIS background that's using, desktop tools and things like that. Some come from a more, maybe data science background using tools like Python and R, and coming from that perspective. And some come from more of a developer background that might be building applications and have done a lot of work with Leaflet or, open layers or things like that. So there's no one that comes in with like every single skill right away. And certainly there's a lot that we learn by doing. And that's been one big thing for me personally is I learned a lot of my skills, on the job, right? There was no course I went through. This was not taught in my formal education. So it's been sort of a passion of mine to share when I can and what I can about that and help people learn that, because I think it's valuable and valuable skills. And I was doing a lot of that with our core team, is helping them ramp up. So those are those kind of three big areas I think that we do is, the SQL component, using not just SQL to maintain a database, but SQL for analysis. It's very powerful and fast. You can use, the Python and Python packages to do different analytics and, everything from, processing data to spatial data science. And then I would say the last bit is developing applications. Our goal is to make that as easy as possible. So, the most comparable thing is maybe using like Kepler GL, which is completely open source to build dashboards. And that uses DeckGL, which is a very powerful rendering library. So you can certainly do those things too, from that perspective. But the cloud you mentioned is sort of everything we've done and built is in the cloud. And a lot of the tools we use exist in the cloud. So not just the database itself, but the data warehouse. Data warehouses, I think, are incredibly powerful in terms of massive processing speed. They're opening a lot of avenues for really large scale raster or satellite imagery analysis. And I think more and more, I think that will start to push forward. So yeah, there's some cloud engineering on our product team. We definitely have core teams that just engineer products and bring them into the cloud. So there's a lot of that's happening. But a lot of the analytics are taking place in the cloud too. I think it's becoming, more and more accessible. But of course, when you look at a map of where these data centers are located, they're just starting to move, into Africa. And, when you think about issues of latency and things like that, certainly that's, the cloud providers know that. And I think, that's one area I think that there's some improvements on. So the one thing that I think that, I'm glad that we are doing is some of the improvements that we're making for, interoperability with files, and GeoParquet is a really important one of those. This makes data really fast for the cloud data warehouses, but also anyone can use those files, in their own ecosystems, whether that's QGIS or, a Jupyter Notebook and GeoPandas. So, that one improvement that is, can really carry across lots of different areas. But I'm happy to kind of go into other topics around the cloud as well. But I think the really nice part is all those things you can do with the tools you have. And when you're ready to make the leap to the cloud, you can use those same languages and skills, when you're ready. And I think that's the most important part, is investing the time in those languages and skills.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. Timmera, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I'd like to chime in on this conversation around skills. So I've noticed, we've all talked about a lot of great software that maybe you could self-learn, or if you're currently in university, you could maybe take a few classes on how to learn how to use some of these software, especially like geospatial software. But I think one thing to really narrow down on what software or what skills you need to learn is, whenever you decide what type of geospatial title you want to pursue, actively look for job opportunities in that field. Maybe say you are interested in being a GIS and map quality analyst, find maybe 5 job opportunities with that title and look for the skill sets in the job description of what they're looking for. And see, maybe do you have a skill gap between what the industry is currently asking for versus the knowledge that you currently have. And if you do see that there is a gap, actively try to find ways to fill in that gap, whether you're trying to self-learn how to use different type of software that the industry is actively looking for, or whether you go the route of taking classes on how to fill in that gap and learn how to use that software. The main thing is the same way you do a market analysis on a product, you need to do a market analysis on yourself and see what the industry is looking for and see where your skills might be lacking and foster those skills within yourself.
Thank you so much, Timmera. That's a very useful tip. So it's always important to understand the skill gap and then try to fill that in wherever you're trying to move into like a new geospatial part or you want to start one. Thank you for sharing that tip, Timmera. Okay, I think I'm going to direct this question to Linda because like I said, she has tried to build a product that we're selling for the African market. So I want to ask, what do you think Africa is lacking in the geospatial space? And what is, limiting that potential as compared to other tech sectors? Like, we see the way fintech has just bloomed over the years. There are more fintech companies now coming out of, the continent. So how do you think what do you think is lacking for us in the geospatial space? And how can we, and what is limiting that potential? Maybe how can we solve that problem?
That is a really very good question. And to me, when I had my 2 startup and really working with focus to in Africa, I had a big challenge. First of all, I had problem with problem with infrastructure. Infrastructure is really a problem, especially in Africa. There is so much demand in Africa, especially in the rural areas. But you can consider the cost for this information, high demand for information, but please, you can consider the cost for this information. Just, for example, look at electricity or electricity connection. For example, in countries like Ghana and South Africa, you have like 80% of the household are connected to the grid. But when you look at Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, you have like less than 50% of the household connected to electricity. So this is just portraying how much infrastructure or the capacity of infrastructure is in Africa. The second is education, or I will say gap in expertise. The inequality in Africa, especially in the urban areas, in education is in the rise. As much as there is increase in education level and expertise, but still there is gap in getting qualified people who work specifically in Africa. You have approximately 40% of Africans over the age of 15 who are illiterate. And you have like 50% of the women above 25% are also illiterate. And if at all, pardon? And if at all there is people who are literate and they are very skilled workers, they are lost in the developed countries. Like 20,000 people are lost from Africa to developed countries, like Google, Microsoft. They're actually going to Africa and getting skilled workers. What about Africa? A third point is financial capability for onboarding and actually retaining staff that are working for you. And also acquiring technical systems. You have a lot of problem acquiring those funds. There's also last year I was looking through venture capital, then I realized you needed, a white face to get venture capital. You had this guy from German actually going to Kenya and starting a company called Hire a Mzungu for white man. And he will charge up to 1,000 euros for his face just to appear in your company to get venture capital. So funds are really lacking. Another big problem is corruption. We are suffering through corruption. and corruption acts as a barrier for innovation. You can have a very amazing innovation based in Africa, but you have to bribe your way through every single thing that you are doing for permits, for licenses. And this is really a big challenge for us, and also in the tech and the geospatial space. And lastly, I would say is the colonial mentality, as I have mentioned. Are Black founders, the question is always, are we as Black founders incapable of running startups or companies? Why is it that big, huge companies that are starting in Africa, look at the southern savannah, the southern Silicon Savannah, or these new, part of Kenya that is having like a savannah-like ecosystem that is cropping up, and all of them, all CEOs there are not African, they are white. So do we have this local mentality or colonial mentality that investors believe that Africans, we cannot run anything, or we cannot run businesses? So I think those are kind of some of the challenges that we are experiencing, or Africa is lacking to start or to run companies. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the insight. In that, because of time, I think I'll just ask one last question and then keep it open for the participants to also ask the questions if they have any. So if you have a question, you can drop it in the chat or drop it in the lobby, and then we'll answer your question. So the last question for our three panelists is, what are the new technical geospatial rules that exist in the 21st century? Okay, so I think Timmera, you can go first.
I am a FAA Part 107 drone pilot, which just means that I'm certified by the Federal Aviation Administration to commercially fly drones. And in my local area, I'm seeing a bit of an intersection between geospatial technology and drone technology. It's becoming like a really big thing here in my community. And so this is another avenue for others who are in the field of geospatial technology, data collection through drones, and then using that data to solve real world problems. So for example, I had drone imagery that I collected, and then from that drone imagery, I was able to do object-based image analysis to detect accessibility parking spaces. And the reason why that's important at the city scale is because maybe people who have accessibility needs, they can know where they can park their cars in accessibility-friendly parking spaces. So it helps increase mobility within a city's infrastructure. And so being able to think geospatially about this intersection between emerging fields such as drone technology and geospatial technology, I think we should really actively look at this. And so for me, yep, drone technology is one of my favorite emerging fields that are intersecting with GIS.
Okay, and Matt, can you go next?
Yeah, the most exciting one for me is in data engineering. There's more and more data that is being produced. I mean, that's just kind of inevitable in different types of data. I think in the last few years, we've seen this boom of data science and the modeling or machine learning or all these different pieces. But what's been happening, I think, in a lot of companies is that they tend to start on data science and then realize that, well, you need really good data to do that. Mm-hmm. So I think there's been a massive boom in terms of people and skills for if you can actually work with and process and create consistent pipelines to clean that data. Data engineering is I think, a massive field, and geospatial has sort of not been entirely addressed, as a specific role for data engineering. A lot of times it's focused on many other things, but if you have the skills to work with and process and manage data at scale, that's going to be really important. So I think that's one that I've been watching closely. And I definitely see it in, companies working with large amounts of data, but I think it's going to start to, expand. And there's a lot of people doing it, and doing the job of data engineering, but may not call that out specifically. And that's a really, really valuable skill set. And I think, as specialization will be key for this space. So, the more as we start to specialize and call out the specific tasks that we're doing, I think the better. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we have the drone technology, we have data engineering. Linda, what's your own role?
I will vote my own job title. GIS evangelist. You need people to understand the data scientists. You need people to understand the engineers. You need to people who understand the drone technology, and you need people who understand also the sales aspect of what the whole GIS ecosystem, GIS technology is bringing. And these are the people that you need to bring out there. They need to bring this technology out there for other people to understand that, oh, this technology exists. People who can go to the clients, people who can go to the audience and build a community around GIS technology, GIS future technology. So yes, and this is one part that I'm watching out for, the GIS evangelists.
Yeah, okay. GIS evangelists, we have the drone technology, and then we have the data engineering. So we're going to take questions from the audience. I'm not sure, Emmanuel, do you have any question or also that you want to chip in and ask before we end the session?
Yeah, thank you, Emmanuel, and huge thanks to the panelists for the wonderful insights and opinions. I'm just wondering if we could probably discuss around how people can position themselves to get these jobs. That's in the aspect of CVs, skills, portfolio, and stuff like that. So I don't know if any of the panelists has an opinion around how, as a GIS person, how I can position myself to get these jobs.
I don't mind going first for this question. So number one, networking is very important. So aligning yourself with people who are already actively in the industry and making meaningful connections with those people. It might turn into an internal referral for a job position. So definitely network with others. And then also reach out to like professional career coaches. So one person that I really advocate for is Dr. Adeola Olubamiji. She goes by Dr. Addy on Instagram. She's an amazing career coach. This isn't me like advertising for her in any capacity, but it's just, I know that she's a really great career coach, and she specializes in helping people, especially like marginalized groups, with creating outstanding CVs and really positioning yourself in the market where you're competitive. So if you have a career coach, or if your university has some type of technical career program that can help you leverage yourself in industry, I really recommend using those resources at your disposal as well. But definitely also doing like career mapping, where you're looking at the titles that you're interested in applying to and see where you might have skill gaps between what industry is currently looking for and what you currently have as far as skills go. So I know for me, one skill that I was lacking at the beginning was the use of SQL or SQL. And so whenever I saw that a lot of positions were really looking for people who had skills using SQL, I made sure like at the beginning of my graduate career to integrate SQL into my GIS experience. So consistently doing career mapping and seeing what industry is looking for is another really great way to position yourself as you start exploring different careers in geospatial technology.
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just to add on Timmera, just a few points. Very good contribution. And I will add that if you are at all looking and you want to position yourself in the technical aspect, create Git repositories. Try as much as you can to use your code, to structure your code, put your code up there so that you can have proof that you did a particular project. Including these in your Git. You can always put a link on your CV, navigating the CV reader towards your Git to understand what you are doing. And if it's possible, create documentation. Look at Medium, create documentation on Medium. There's dev.com also too. Create your documentation there, bring in your code, create simple codes, create a simple tutorial, so that you can have all these technical aspects brought together, including your soft skills inside there, and you can have a proof. If at all I'm looking at somebody's CV, I don't want you to claim that you have a specific skill, but rather I need proof that you have this skill. Yeah, that is my contribution.
Thank you, Linda. Matt, do you want to add something?
Yeah, those are two fantastic, I would say, tips, as they both, from the portfolio perspective and the career mapping. All of those, I mean, are things I would absolutely recommend. As I think the last step that I certainly find is, a lot of times, there's geospatial roles aren't always like posted, right? I think, the extreme value of networking is very important, reaching out to individuals at places that you want to work at and making connections with that team, and having kind of informational interviews in a way that for me shows, I think, if it takes some initiative, and oftentimes they might be looking for someone, or maybe they don't know what they're looking for, but you put yourself at the front, to say, hey, I'm here, here's what I do. And then, like you said, having those skills, having a really well-rounded out portfolio, showing your code, showing your work, showing that you can do it right, it speaks volumes, right? And that, you like Linda, you said, even more than a CV, right? I actually did this, here's how I did it. And if I can, see that you did your code, like that generally, can boost anything like that. So, and then, like Timmera, you said, having that career mapping to say, here's what I do, here's really where I focus, and kind of having that, like, a really good mission statement in terms of like what you want to achieve. I think those are all fantastic tips, but the number one I say is reach out, use your networks, post and talk about the things that you're working on. There's just fantastic networks on many different platforms. There's not one that I would say, is better than the rest, but get your work out there, and people take notice of that, and put yourself in those communities. I think is really, really important.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Linda and Timmera. So just to recap, the key points are to showcase your works, to network with professionals, and get a career coach. Also have a GitHub profile, which is more like also showcasing your work, because sometimes in this industry, most of our works are usually comes in different formats. Some can be in forms of codes, and GitHub is like a very good place to host those kind of projects. And some can be in form of maps as well. So having a portfolio where recruiters can see what you've done and not what you say you can do is a very good way to also position yourself in getting those opportunities. I think, Omonola, do you have some questions, or are there questions on the chat from participants?
No question from the chat. Let me quickly check the lobby.
Okay. So I think while we wait for that, I have a question here which I would like to ask, and that's around innovation. We talked about the career that we should watch out for. Matt mentioned data engineering. Timmera mentioned about drone, the intersection between GIS and drones. And Linda mentioned about geospatial evangelism. which is also a very good thing, which I think is not really rampant or is not really much in the GIS industries. But in the tech industry, we have product advocates, we have DevRels, and I'm wondering if we probably have DevRel or maybe geospatial developers relations in the industry. So if you have anything to say about that, I would really like you to maybe shed some more light on that. But aside these cues, how about geoinnovation itself? What geoinnovation should we watch out for? Aside skills and technical roles, how about the geospatial industry as a whole? What area do you think we should watch out for some of us that might probably want to innovate, in those particular sectors? So maybe Matt want to go first.
Yeah, I think from the innovation perspective, there's a lot on the cutting edge, from I think I heard, when I joined, things around point cloud and some of the new raster formats that are kind of accounting for time series, ZAR files and things like that. So I see that as one big area that's moving forward quite a bit, and then all of that is, how can you work in your imagery and things like that. We're getting to a place where there's more data collection that can really be done, and you don't need these massive tools to do that, and I think specifically when you're looking, one thing I try to be cognizant of, I'm here in New York and I can get on cloud and have access to all these things, but what if I didn't have that, and how would I do that? I think is really important to kind of frame and think about, for different environments and locations. So, the fact that, there's such a way to collect and use this data now, I think is going to be really, really important. That's one big thing I see, is that putting, data collection back in the hands of users, and doing that with, sort of non-traditional networks. Like, if you have a phone and that's how you collect data, you can build tools to do that. And if that's your only connectivity, that's great. Or if you're, building, can collect data there. So I think thinking more and more about ways that we can do this, sort of, on these limited connectivity areas is going to be very important. And then how, like I said, the more data that's there, we need to process and use that and do that really effectively. But I think all that happens through, these kind of community discussions and how we really push that forward. So like that evangelist concept in terms of taking this, engaging in conversations, Linda, exactly like what you were saying, is how do we bring this to more people and evangelize this, I think is going to be incredibly important. So I think that's one big area. And I would say the only other thing that I've been seeing that's really interesting lately is sort of in this data engineering role. We've been using spatial indices quite a bit. So things like H3s, cells, and stuff like that from the vector side. We've been applying it to raster data, and how does that speed up data analysis? We've been working on some really great things there, but it can just increase the speed of processing of data, because you're effectively not using a geometry, you're using an index, which is a string or an integer, which is a far smaller data storage piece from that perspective. And visualization, it's also incredibly fast. But I've seen that happen in so many different spaces. That's a big one that I've been kind of tracking. I was actually at a talk and I saw someone presenting about this and how they pulled this into Apache Pinot, which is a sort of end user analytics toolkit. It's actually how they LinkedIn uses this as their analytics platform. When you click on a post and you see your stats, it's analytics for millions of end users. So thinking about geospatial analytics for millions of end users, this is something I don't think we always think about, but how could you do that and how would you use those things is really interesting too.
Okay, thank you so much, Matt. Linda?
geo-innovation areas, you should watch out for. I have a few points, or more points. I like doing a lot of research, and I've seen a lot in smart cities, digital technology across all cities. And there are a lot of ideas here and there that I've seen also working in Africa, which I was impressed. There is a new startup that is called Bus 54. 54 for the country, 54, and it brings in digital infrastructures for public road transportation. And it uses GIS, route optimization, blockchain, IoT, in all and location aspect in doing this digital infrastructure. This is one startup that I'm really watching out for. And recently, the mayor of Freetown, Liberia, was here in Berlin, and she was talking. Her name is Yvonne, I think, Akisoya. And she was talking about GIS usage in Freetown, Liberia, which I think a lot of several countries in Africa should adapt to. They are doing geo-tracking for waste collection. And this geo-tracking, of course, is all about GIS, and also tax collection from households using image recognition. So they had a point that they collected taxes, but only a few houses paid for the taxes. And so he called in a GIS company that used image recognition of all houses, numbered them, and then they sent letters to these houses demanding taxes. And I find this this smart city aspect cropping into and using the GIS technology quite cool. And one that is being used here in German, or not, it's a kind of a startup that will work perfectly in Africa, is using cars as drop points, as post box. So they have an app that detects where a car is, a specific car is, and they bring to your car your parcel. Instead of your home where you will not be there, they bring to your car your parcel. Of course, all these works with precision geolocation. Another innovation area that I am quite interested in, and I had a bit of peeping into, is indoor mapping. I mean, you have all these huge shopping malls that are cropping in, and it could be so perfect if we can use geo-innovation into navigating, into mapping indoor infrastructure, indoors and infrastructure as a whole. One that I got to learn 3 months ago is GIS and virtual reality. There is a startup also, I think, started by NASA, if I'm not wrong, NASA. It's called Earth, AERTH, and it acts as a data lake. So it's a dataverse that can synchronize real-time data for metaverse using big data, artificial intelligence, remote sensing. Yeah, so those are kind of the innovation that are there that I'm really I'm really interested into. And the last one, as Matt said, is in construction and reconstruction using point cloud and LIDAR data. Yeah, this is kind of one of the one that I'm also I'm seeing startups going into. There's for example, predictive construction. When a specific infrastructure is to be renovated, of course, you need geo information in such situation. Yeah, that is from my side. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Linda. I think you've touched almost all the sectors.
Sorry. Yeah, it's really interesting to talk about all these. It's the passion, the passion of an evangelist.
You're really an evangelist. But the thing is, the reason why this is very important is because we might have people on the call that have some ideas and don't know where to innovate around. And that's why I thought we should also talk about this. So those that have ideas can know where to focus on, and those that don't, can also maybe get an idea from this session. So Timmera, our time is fast spent. So Timmera.
Yeah, honestly, Matt and Linda, they really have touched on a lot of the great points. I also I really love this intersection between GIS and virtual reality. I do think that's something that's emerging. Also, this conversation around 3D models, like whenever we're talking about GIS, we're really talking about representations of our Earth. And ways that we can represent it in a way that's meaningful so that we can do different types of analysis or different forms of problem solving, whether it's sustainability or disaster response. Being able to create these 3D models or digital twins of our communities or the Earth at large, I think it's a very important innovation point that is gaining a lot of attention throughout the industry. And then just to touch on geospatial blockchain, there's a company called Medici Land Governance, I believe. And they basically put land records on the blockchain to have these verifiable forms of verifiable and authenticated forms of land records that people can hold without having to go to their local city council or city department to get this information. And this is really important in rural communities. And so this is a company that I really advocate people to look into, because I think that they are really doing a really great job at connecting the dots between geospatial technology, drone technology, and blockchain. So this is a really great innovative point as well.
Thank you, Timmera. Honestly, but for the time, we can go on and on and on. But unfortunately, our time is fast spent, and it's time for the workshop session. So thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you for honoring our invitations, and thank you for sharing those great insights. Now to the participants, you can drop off the call. If you have any questions, you can definitely reach out to the panelists. They are on LinkedIn. And you can also reach out to us, also provide you their contact information in case you're finding it difficult to access. I'm very sure they're definitely going to help and answer your questions in case you have any. So it's time for the workshop. Let's all move to the lobby and join the workshop sessions. We have the GeoSim editing, and then we have open layers, getting started with open layers, and then we have OSM community beyond basic editing with GeoSim. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.